Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to discuss this very sobering but important topic tonight, which is the topic of anti-Semitism in our K through 12 schools in America. My name is Kit Hart. I am a chapter leader in Maryland, as well as part of the Moms for Liberty resource team. And we, as you know, work in Moms for Liberty to provide tools that will help educate, unify, and empower parents to fight and defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So here at the resource team, we are busy, especially in this month, the month of July, which we've dedicated to combating anti-Semitism. We thank you to everybody who joined us in the first of our three-part series, which was the Watch Party of Killing America, produced by Eli Steele. If you haven't, you may go back and look at our portal. We have that recorded, and it was a really fascinating conversation with the producer after viewing the 30-minute documentary. So I encourage all of you, if you're interested, to go back and watch that. And I'm really excited to have you all on here tonight with the wonderful Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She is just a wealth of knowledge, information on how to combat anti-Semitism in our schools. So just before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. As you may see on your right-hand side of your screen, there is a comment section. Please feel free to engage with other members throughout the program, as well as insert any questions that you have for Laurie over there on the comment section. We'll be getting to your questions after the short presentation, which will take about 30 minutes. And then she has been so gracious enough to lend answers to any questions that you may have. So please continue to ask the questions over there. Just a reminder that we are joyful warriors, and we do expect that all communication is respectful and civil, and we do have the right to remove anybody who does not act in accordance with our mission. Additionally, we do want to say that all of our wonderful presenters, they are speaking in their own capacity, not on behalf of Moms for Liberty, but we completely appreciate and welcome them to our resource team and to our meetings. So just a brief introduction of Laurie before we get started. She is the founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and is a voice of conviction in a wilderness of moral uncertainty. Laurie speaks the truth about Israel, Christianity, and America, and is a watchman on the wall, speaking out on falsehood and standing for truth, from national media opportunities to her local schools in Williamson County, Tennessee. Laurie cares deeply for children and fights to make sure our next generation of leaders are learning the truth about American history and Israel, rather than the lies perpetrated by left-leaning liberal perspectives. When she was a homeschooling mother of 5, she led the charge against falsehood about Israel, the United States, and America's Judeo-Christian history that she found in her children's school books in Williamson County. This led textbook giant Pearson Publishing to make changes to the way U.S. history was presented. The Taking Back America's Children initiative is educating grassroots parents and grandparents about how to engage their school systems for truth and how to rally like-minded citizens in their communities. Her Focus on Israel TV series has been featured on the Daystar television network, and it includes a trio of Emmy-winning documentaries, has reached a potential audience of 2 billion over 20 TV affiliates and satellite broadcasters. So that is phenomenal. And without further ado, I am very pleased to welcome Laurie Cardoza-Moore.
Kit, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you to have this conversation tonight. This is a very important conversation. I commend Moms for Liberty for taking this issue on, because if our Jewish community is not protected, no one is protected. And
Amen.
so I look forward to having this conversation with all of you.
Thank you. Well, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how did we get here? As you saw on the images in the video that was just played, um, when I look at those images, I think back to 1933, Germany. I remember the images. In fact, there is a movie called The Rise of Hitler. It's on YouTube. If you get the chance to watch it, it's a two-part series to see the similarities of what was going on back then in the universities, the attacks on Jews in just walking down the street, the graffiti that was spray painted or painted over Jewish businesses. And even more horrifying is watching the reaction of the United States when our Jewish brethren came to us on the St. Louis. They went to every port up the eastern seaboard and they were turned away. How did we get to this place in America? And years ago, when I started this organization, Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, I asked myself, being raised Catholic, um, and then moving into the Protestant Christian faith, I asked myself, could the Holocaust happen again? Because if you think about it, think about Germany at the time that Hitler rose to power. Germany at that time was an educated nation. It was a wealthy nation. You could even say that Germany at that time was a Judeo-Christian nation. There were Jews and Christians in Germany. So how could the German population, people who weren't Jews, how could they stand by and allow 6 million Jews to go to the slaughter? Well, I think we're getting to see a little bit about that today. And that's why what we do is so critically important. You know, years ago when we started the organization, I was always, and I still am, I look for anti Semitic incidents and we publicly shame people when they're involved in like right now, Randy Weingarten, she's in Houston, Texas with the American Federation of Teachers, and she's pushing a resolution anti-Semitic. In one breath, she says that they condemn anti-Semitism. In the next, she won't even adopt the best global definition of what anti-Semitism is. It's called the IRA definition, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. They have a definition that is the best to use. Over 35 or almost 35 states in the United States use that definition as a guideline to see when incidents like what we've been watching happening on the college campuses, when these incidents cross the line into anti-Semitism, when they violate Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. We've been watching this activity going on. And here is Randy Weingarten. She won't even support states adopting this definition, which is crucial. Because once you have the definition and once you see the activity like what we've been seeing happening on our college campuses, then you have to arrest the people and you have to try them. But they don't, this is what the left doesn't want to happen. They don't want to try these people. They want these people to get away with this. And, I know many of you who are with us tonight have probably seen the images of our children, K through 12, marching in Hamas rallies, pro Hamas rallies, thinking to yourself, what happened? Well, I want to share with you a little bit of the journey. We can't talk about all of it tonight, but I'm hoping that as I go through and I share with you the history, and this is recent, this is in the last decade, but I hope that as I share this information with you, that you'll ask questions because we are our brother's keeper. I have no doubt that everyone watching on this program is either a Jew or is a Christian. We both share faith in the same God. And so we all know that because of our faith, we are biblically responsible for our brother Judah. We have a biblical mandate to stand, and we're going to talk about that as well. But raising my kids here in Williamson County, we've been here for 34, 35 years, and this county has changed. I received a phone call from one of the members of our organization. We call them watchmen. And the duty of the watchman, like what is stated in the book of Ezekiel, is to pay attention to what's going on around you and to watch for the enemy. And if the watchman sees the enemy advancing, it is the duty of the watchman to warn the inhabitants of the city. And if the inhabitants of the city are warned and they don't take action to protect themselves from the enemy that's advancing, then if any blood is shed, it'll be on their head. But if we, as watchmen, see the enemy advancing and we refuse to get engaged, we refuse to warn our neighbors, then if any innocent blood is shed, it will be required of us. You all play the role of watchmen as well. Just the very work that Moms for Liberty is doing is warning your neighbors, warning your family, warning your friends about what is happening. But this mom came to me and she said, "You'll never believe what we're teaching our children in Williamson County schools." This was back in 2012. And I said, bring me what you've got. We went through a textbook. It was a Pearson published textbook. We went through that textbook. Not only did we find anti-Semitic content, anti-Israel content, we found anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, pro-China, pro-Islam. There were 37 pages in this book dedicated to Islam, only 13 pages dedicated to Christianity, and 17 pages dedicated to Judaism. This curriculum that they have brought into our children's schools and that they've been teaching our children with has been to slowly change what we have been trying to instill in our children from the day that they're born. And in this textbook, the quote in the textbook was a quote that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies and army actions. Not only did it have that content, but it also called Israel an occupier, that they are occupying Palestinian land. Now that on its face is inaccurate. In fact, I produced a documentary, as Kit was talking about. Films are one of the tools that we use in our wheelhouse in order to reach millions of people around the world. But we produced a documentary called Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. And in that film, we make the case historically, legally, archaeologically, and biblically as to why Israel has rights to that land. Now, our textbooks will teach about the Middle East, and they'll teach about the time of Abraham. But the information that they share with our kids is skewed, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. But the quote in the textbook that legitimized the Palestinians blowing themselves up in our Jerusalem restaurant, I knew exactly what that incident was. It was the Sparrow Pizzeria bombing that happened back in 2001. I don't know if any of you remember that, but the carnage that was left over, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and a terrorist came into the pizzeria, blew himself up. There were kids who had just gotten out of school in there. There were parents with little children in their strollers. Now, in this textbook, with this quote, legitimizing the Palestinians blowing themselves up using terrorism in order to get their way, was there a picture, do you think, of the paragraph that was being spoken of? No. They don't put pictures. They don't put images unless the images and the pictures reflect what the agenda that they are pushing or the message that they are trying to push to our children. We wonder why our kids, in fact, the parent that brought this to me, her son, the way she found out about the book Her son came home from school one day. It was his first year. He was homeschooled. He had been homeschooled up and through 8th grade. This was his first year at Franklin High School, 9th grade, and he took a human geography class. It was a human geography textbook. And her son comes home that day and says to his mother, "Who has legitimate rights to the land of Israel?" Now, this is a kid who's raised in an evangelical home, homeschooled, Bible study every day. He knew the Bible and he knew who had legitimate rights to the land. And his mom asked him, "What does the Bible say?" And he says to his mother, "Mom, I know what the Bible says." He said, "But tell me the truth. Who has legitimate rights to the land?" Do you see that? The class was being taught in November. It was actually on a day called Nakba Day. It's a day that Arabs use as a disdainful term against Israel because that was the day that the United Nations voted in 1947 to partition the land of Israel. They call it Nakba. And the teacher at Franklin High School that day that was teaching the human geography course invited a so-called expert from the Middle East to come and speak to her class. He was an expert because, as I found out later on, the teacher told me, "Oh, he's been to Israel 11 times." I said, "Oh, that's nice. That makes him an expert, right?" He came with propaganda. And here was a young man who had just started. He'd only been in the public school system for 3 months. He was homeschooled. His mom believed she had him on a solid foundation going into the public school system. And all it took was that one expert who caused her son to doubt his faith. This is the impact of the curriculum and the textbooks. And this is why we cannot settle, we cannot rest until we get rid of all the garbage. We get rid of every Pearson published textbook, every McGraw-Hill, because they're a subsidiary, so are all the other. There's 80% of the textbooks being used in the United States of America are Pearson owned. And guess who the 4 largest shareholders of Pearson Publishers happens to be? Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Libya. All Islamist countries. They have been investing in our education system, starting with Berkeley, back since the 70s. And look at how they infiltrated the universities, they infiltrated the education schools, and they infiltrated our classrooms. And now our children don't even know our history. That's how we got that book. Well, let me tell you what we did. Because when I saw that, we went to battle with Williamson County Schools. We went to the school board. We petitioned them to get rid of the textbook. They were having a school board meeting, and we knew we had to get that school board meeting packed. We went on the radio. We ran commercials for 2 weeks telling parents and citizens what our children were being fed in the public school system through the curriculum. And we needed moms and dads and taxpayers to show up. Well, that night that they were going to vote to either keep the book or get rid of it, we had a standing room only crowd. And parent after parent, taxpaying citizen after taxpaying citizen got up and spoke and asked them to get rid of the textbook. And when I got up, I told them that this is an election year. And if you've heard from we the people, and if you do not get rid of this textbook, we're going to get rid of every one of you. Well, that was a bold claim to make when I'd never done something like that before. But they went and voted that night. And against the will of the people, they voted to keep the textbook. They did not see the anti-Semitic quote and some of the anti-Judeo-Christian and the rest of the content as being troublesome to have to remove one book. So guess what we did? We went to work the next day. That was April of 2014. We had 4 months to find people who would run for school board, train them, and then work on their campaign to get them elected. And guess what? Within 4 months, we took every one of those school board members down, replaced all 6 in one election cycle. It had never been done before. But we were compelled to take a stand. That was how, or when we first started to realize that there's a problem with the education system, that the people that run for school board, they sit on that school board. Some, not everybody, but a large percentage of the people have an agenda, and they're there to keep this garbage in our children's classroom and continue the indoctrination so that we destroy this country. So as we promoted what was going on, what we had done, national attention came to bear. We had Fox and Friends was coming down to cover the story of what was going on. We started getting all this media attention, and all of a sudden we started hearing from parents and citizens all over the country. They were making their kids bring their textbooks home. They were looking in their kids' textbooks. This was back when you could actually get your you could bring your kids could bring their textbooks home, which wasn't that long ago. But now they won't let you bring the textbooks home. They won't even give you a link without a code. And you can't share that link with your parents. That's only for the students in the class. But we went to work all over the country. And I have been working in the state of Florida, working with the Department of Education, reviewing textbooks, pointing out the errors. And in fact, back then, Governor DeSantis was actually Congressman DeSantis. I went to meet with him in Washington, D.C., because I knew that education was an important issue to him. I brought him the textbooks with all the inaccuracies and the biases. And he said to me then, he said, I'm running for governor. If I get elected, we're getting rid of these textbooks. And we're getting rid of Common Core. And sure enough, he did. That was his first order of business. So I started to work, our team that reviews textbooks started working with his Department of Education. We were reviewing the curriculum, pointing out the inaccuracies. We were able to review the standards. And the standards within the state of Florida, Florida was the first state in the nation that took our recommendations to teach the children, 1.8 million kids in the state of Florida every year, about the role that the Hebrew Bible plays in our founding, and the role that it plays in the drafting of our founding documents, and the role that it played in our form and structure of government. In fact, our kids are going to learn that no, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and there is a difference. And so Florida became the first state to adopt that. Tennessee we were able to change the standards in Tennessee as well. They're the second state. We're working in other states, working with the departments of education to change them. It's very difficult because a lot of the departments of education are run by a bunch of lefties, and they don't see the world through the same lens that we do. We're trying to take back our country. We're trying to instill the values. We talked about anti-Semitism. This all happened because of an anti-Semitic quote. Our country, George Washington, after we had won the American Revolution, and just as an aside so that you all know, talking about anti-Semitism and a lack of gratitude that we show to the Jews, there was a gentleman by the name of Haym Salomon, a close friend of George Washington's. You may have heard of him. Haym Salomon died without a dime to his name. He bankrolled the American Revolution for George Washington, a wealthy Sephardic Jew from Poland. He gave everything, and he was never paid back by our government. Never. But George Washington, in Newport, Rhode Island, there's a synagogue there called the Toro Synagogue. I encourage you all to visit. Go to Newport and visit this synagogue. It's amazing. But George Washington received a letter from the synagogue because they were concerned what would happen to the Jewish community. Remember, Jews historically have had to wander from country to country for a couple thousand years because they've always been attacked in every place that they've ever lived. And Washington knew this. And when he received the letter from them, as they expressed their concern, how will we fare in this new country, in these new colonies? And Washington went and paid them a visit personally. He quoted from the book of Micah and told them that their days of wandering were over and that they would be able to share, they would be able to live under their own fig tree and they would be able to rest. They would know peace. That's what George Washington envisioned for the United States of America. And unfortunately, those parts of history are not taught to our children. And it's why we can take a stand against what's happening now. We have a huge problem with textbooks and curriculum. And we are always looking for people who will review the textbooks. If you can get a hold of them in your school district, if you can just review them and let us know what content is in there, what anti-Semitic content. There was another example I want to share with all of you, because if you have kids that are in the public school system, and I know not everybody can homeschool and not everybody can afford private school, and you may have to put your kids in a public school. But even though you put your children in a public school doesn't mean that you don't have to be involved with what's going on. You can engage and you can be a resource aide in the school. You can volunteer to do that, or you can help us with reviewing textbooks, looking for the content, because we are still going after Pearson. All those years ago, we flipped our school board in Williamson County, but we lost it because the parents and the citizens who came after us didn't stay in the battle. What we're doing and what we're engaging in is not something that we do one time. It's not a one and done situation. We have to change the culture. And that means we have to be engaged in the culture every day. We have to have a plan. And that's why we focus on taking back America's children, the initiative. We go county by county, state by state. We are training parents and citizens to flip their school boards so that they can control the content. Because bottom line is, we all know that all politics is local. And this is an election year. We should all know who our school board members are. We should know them by name, and they should know us by name. We should know what they believe. And if they don't agree with us, we need to put them on notice, especially on notice on a year like now, because it is an election year. And we should let them know that we're coming for their job. They can't reflect our values, and they don't see what's happening to our children as being a problem. They don't belong in that seat. And we have to remove them. But it requires becoming educated and informed about what is being used. I talked about Pearson. Pearson has bought up and owns actually 80% of the textbooks being used in the United States of America. Think about that. They don't change the name of the publisher. They keep the same name because they don't want us to know that we have a monopoly. We were able to get Pearson to change content in the textbook. We were able to get them to remove that anti-Semitic quote out of that one textbook, that human geography textbook. But the first time they removed it, do you think they removed it completely? No. They lied to the members of the textbook commission. They said they removed it. And guess what? I found it. It was on a different page. So yeah, they removed it. They put it somewhere else. This is how these people are. These publishers are. They don't care. They have an agenda. It's a globalist agenda. And they're going to continue to indoctrinate our children unless we stop them. And again, that's why being involved in looking at your kids' textbooks, demanding that you have access, going to your school board and saying, when are you going to be reviewing the textbooks? We've been trying to do that here in Williamson County in Tennessee. I serve on the textbook commission. I'm a member of the commission. I have requested repeatedly textbooks to review. I can't even get a physical textbook. I'm told by the Department of Education in Tennessee that I only have access to what the general population has. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. I have been appointed by an elected official to review textbooks, and you're telling me I can't even get a textbook to review? So I can't fulfill my duties that I swore and took oath to do? So we're working on that. But what I'm experiencing and what I'm dealing with is what some of you, I have no doubt, have probably already encountered in trying to research the textbooks and try to find the content. But that's how we take back. We have to keep going until we win. We don't give up. We never give up. So I want to I want to leave you with two more examples, and I think it's probably been about, yep, it's been about 25, 30 minutes. Um, you may not see, when you're looking for anti-Semitism in textbooks, you may not see it as overtly as I saw it that day. You may see subtle references. For example, when Abraham, and this is in the Middle East Studies textbook, when Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees, he went to Palestine. And when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, he took them to Palestine. Now, on its face, both of those two statements are false, and they're misleading, because Abraham didn't go to Palestine. Abraham went to Canaan. And Moses didn't go to Palestine either, because Moses went to Canaan. Palestine didn't come, the term Palestine didn't come along until the Roman period, which is hundreds of years later. So it's these little subtle innuendos, they're already planting in the minds of our children the issue of Palestine. They're making the kids familiar, and they're going to create kids that are sympathetic to a Palestinian cause that is fake. It is a lie from the pit. That's why we have to be more educated than they are. We have to do our research. We have to know the truth, and then we have to confront them, because I'm telling you, they're not going to walk away. They're not going to just say, "Oh, they caught me," and they're going to change their ways. That's not going to happen. This is a fight for the future of our republic. And we have to teach our children. We have to teach them the Bible, and we've got to teach them our history. We are suffering as a country from an identity crisis. We don't know where we came from, and our children certainly don't. And if we don't know where we've come from, how can we possibly know where we're going? So, with that, I want to go ahead and I think, Kit, this would be a good time to ask some questions.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Laurie. As you were speaking, you just remind me so much of a joyful warrior. Your spirit and your um, just the way that you speak and the way that you are unafraid, but you do so boldly and bravely and with a smile on your face. And so, welcome to the joyful warrior. The band of warriors we have here. So,
Thank
so thank you
you.
so much. And a lot of what you were saying, I think for sure resonated with all of our leaders on this call, because so
Mhm,
many of us have done work to flip school boards and to identify candidates who don't
mhm.
reflect our values. And so, like you, we've we've done a lot of work in trying to remove them and replace them with better, more qualified, and more educated candidates. So, so thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We do have
Absolutely.
a
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. So I wanted to go back. You said the four countries where most of these books are published are Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and what was the fourth country?
Actually, those are the 4 largest shareholders of
Shareholders. Okay.
Pearson Published. Yeah. The 4 largest shareholders are Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Libya.
Libya. Okay.
These are
That is so
Islamist
interesting.
countries.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that says everything that you need to know. That's very eye-opening. So Pearson Publishing, what are they doing now since our most of our schools aren't even providing textbooks to their students.
Mm-mm.
They're most of their work is done online. So what are
Yeah,
they
that's
focused what is
correct.
Pearson focused on now?
Pearson is doing the digital curriculum now. So
Okay.
even though you don't see a book, and there's a movement afoot to go back to physical books in the classroom. I'll share with you an example. I've been working with a group in San Francisco. These are Democrats mostly, 8 couples, and 7 of them are Democrats. One of them were Republicans. But you may recall, I think it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, there were 3 school board members that were recalled from San Francisco school board.
Mhm.
And they were Democrats and they were recalled by Democrats. So I went out to meet with this group to find out why. And these were Asian families. And they said the reason why they recalled those 3 school board members was because during COVID, these 3 school board members were more interested in changing the name of their children's school than
Mhm.
what trauma their children were going through. And on top of that, they are fed up with their children having to use technology all day long in the classroom. They
Mhm.
want the kids back in the books. These were high-tech families.
Mhm.
These weren't just your average Joe. They're high-tech. They know what's going on. They know the damage that's done when our kids are in front of computer screens for too long. So even Democrats care. And this was a good lesson for me because I always think it's just the Republicans that are on our side. But Democrats care about their children too. When it comes to education, when it comes to our children, we care if we're honest with ourselves. And these parents did.
Mhm.
So you may even find yourself in a situation because, yes, I know I'm very aware of Moms for Liberty and the groups that you guys have had where you've been involved in flipping school boards across the country. And I commend you for doing that because there's, what is it, 34,000 school districts across the country. We
Mhm.
have got to recruit more parents. If we could get parents just in their own county to fight the battle to go after the school board, find out what those school board members believe. How do they feel about CRT? What do they think about the chaos that's erupting? What do they think about the marches? I mean, it's even happening in K through 12 schools where we have kids marching for Hamas in the
Mm.
schools across this country.
Yeah. I
So,
think you're right. Going back to what you said about the textbooks, that really is a bipartisan issue. And both Democrats and Republicans really do want to see a decrease in technology in our classrooms. And that might
mhm,
be a way for us to kind of come together with some of the more moderate, the more reasonable Democrats. Because there was recently a school board meeting where a bunch of us were speaking about cell phones in schools and how detrimental it can
mhm.
be to kids. And somebody who spoke right after me is running for school board, and she's a progressive, and she was
Mhm.
in alignment with everything that I said, and I completely agree with everything she said. So
Mhm.
that might be a way if we say, our children are, there's a reason why the literacy rate has plummeted in recent years.
Yes.
It's because they're being exposed to these screens all day long, and they don't have any access to real books, specifically textbooks. So I think that's very important. But going back to what you were saying, what are some, so if we're trying to get Pearson in particular out of our schools,
Mhm.
what are some other alternative publishers or other companies that provide curriculum and materials to schools that we can provide as an
Mhm.
alternative resource to the school boards?
There are a lot of great publishers out there. There's smaller publishing houses. Hillsdale has
Mhm.
curriculum that we could use. Um, I know that there are other groups that are forming and providing good textbooks. But the problem is that the smaller, it all comes down to the dollar. The smaller textbook publishing companies that have good content, it costs more per book, per unit than somebody like Pearson, because Pearson has the corner on the market. So their price point is so much cheaper. So that therein lies a part of the problem. But there's you we never hear about the good publishers because they never get an opportunity to come to the table to give a bid, because they can't put up the money. You've got to put up, um, thousands of dollars in order to even go through the bid process. So that's been the biggest problem. But
Hmm.
getting back also to the technology, one of the things that we're trying to push is with our state legislature is to take the kids back to physical books, get them out of the digital world, because they can manipulate the content in the digital
Mm.
um, curriculum. They can send if a parent says, I want to see what this lesson is about, and they send a link to the parent, here's the lesson that your student is going to be learning this semester. And they can have one link for the parent, and then the real link for the teacher and for the student, and the
Wow.
parent will never
Mm.
see. This is how manipulative these people are, how
Mm.
deceptive they are, because again, they have an ultimate goal, and that ultimate goal is to bring down this country, and they're going to do it through our children.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why, reviewing textbooks, getting people to run for school board, like I said before, it's not a one and done. We have to reorient our lives. And instead of all the entertainment that we don't get to do, I mean, I make the commitment, just as you do, Kit, to do what you're doing, and others who are on this program. We have made the sacrifice because what's at stake is our children's future. And we're
Yeah.
going to be gone one day. But what legacy are we going to leave behind? Because I don't want my kids, when I'm on my deathbed, when my time is up, I don't want my kids coming to me, or my grandkids coming to me saying, you know, Savta, what happened? Where were you when this was going on in our country?
Yeah.
Too many people, too many Americans have gotten lazy. We've taken for granted the freedoms that we have, and now we're in this situation. In fact, I was reading before I came on here that we might be in the process of another attempted coup with the Biden
Right.
administration.
Right.
This is
Right.
the very reality of what's happened. This is what happens when we, the people, leave people who have wrong motives in mind for our
Yeah.
country. We have to take back our country. And I commend all of you for what you're doing. I commend Moms for Liberty for keeping up the fight.
Thank you. Yeah. You're right. It's so important, and we are on a tipping point right now in America. I think it's very encouraging to see specifically this movement grow so quickly over the past 3 years is because we
Mhm.
need something like this to change the course of our country. So,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. So a couple more questions. How early have you found that this misinformation about Israel in particular starts occurring in K through 12?
It starts as early as kindergarten and preschool.
Wow.
Just
Mm,
like, and we're seeing more of it now because of what happened on October 7th, and because of the war in Gaza. Because now, like for example, there's a teachers union in Portland, Oregon, that's teaching the kids about how the Israelis are causing genocide on the Palestinians. Kindergartners are learning
what?
about this.
Oh my
Yes, this
gosh.
is what the teachers are bringing into the classroom.
Mm,
So it starts, the indoctrination and the anti-Semitism starts at a very young age. We have to protect, we've got to protect our republic, because it's the Judeo-Christian values that protects our Jewish communities. And trust me, they're coming after, they're not just coming after the Jews. They're coming after the Christians. Look
oh
at what
yeah.
happened in Germany. Again, I point back to Germany, 1933. I mean, Hitler comes to power and people support him and vote him in. And we're
Mhm,
looking at our own leadership, what's happened with Biden, with Obama. And we
mhm,
look at the curriculum that they brought into our kids to indoctrinate our kids to hate Israel. We are giving our money to Iran so Iran can use the money to send to Syria and to Lebanon and to the Houthis now in Yemen so that they can attack Israel. The whole goal, just like when they started with the curriculum, just like Qatar and the Saudis started funding Berkeley and the professors started to write propaganda in textbooks, and the textbooks made it into the K through 12 classrooms.
mm.
They're
Wow.
trying to eliminate the nation of Israel, first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people,
Mm,
first the pigs, then the eggs, first the great Satan, then the little Satan. The
mm.
goal has always been to annihilate the Jews and to annihilate the Christians. That's why when we see anti Semitism in our community, we have got to stand up. We've got to look at our textbooks, because that's where they're indoctrinating our children to hate the Jews. They're blaming the Jews for what's happening in Gaza right now. And let me just share another thing with you that we just found out. um, October 7th happened. October 9th, they had curriculum ready for teachers to teach teachers how to teach what happened on October 7th. And it is
Oh,
all propaganda. It's all propaganda.
mm,
Nothing about the slaughter, putting babies in ovens and baking them while their mother was being raped, as the mother had to listen to her baby screaming as it was being baked in the oven. Was that in there? No. But
mm.
somebody knew October 7th was going to happen, and they had curriculum ready to teach about it.
Wow.
That's
That's chilling.
disgusting.
Yeah,
It's
that
very
is.
chilling.
Yeah. I'm in Maryland, and one of the bills that garnered not enough support, but some support on both aisles didn't end up passing. But I don't think it will end there. I think it's going to be brought up next session. But it was a bill that introduced, or basically instilling the correct teaching of Israel in the K through 12 schools. And I
Mhm.
was at the hearing in the House, and I mean, both, like I said, Democrats and Republicans, both were very much in support of having this bill pass. And then a gentleman came and testified against the bill, and said that this isn't the true history of Jews. Basically, it was an awful, very, very anti-Semitic testimony. And one of the Democratic delegates said, that's the exact reason why we need this bill to move forward. It ended up never getting out of the House. But anyway,
Wow.
have you heard of more bills like that throughout the country? Or do you see in houses of representatives or Senate houses, do you see that this is something that they're concerned about, or is it falling on deaf ears?
There is a huge concern among legislators. They see the handwriting on the wall, but there's also a concerted effort, just like I mentioned previously, Randy Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers. They're holding their convention right now as we speak in Houston, Texas. They are pushing resolutions, and they have been in their state um, uh, organizations, pushing to condemn the genocide against the Palestinians by the Israelis. This is happening everywhere across the country. When, like I said, they're taking up the resolution right now in Houston. This is going to be one of the resolutions. Randy Weingarten said in one of the resolutions, they condemn anti-Semitism. And then in the same breath says, but I condemn the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. We need the definition of anti-Semitism, because if we have a definition, when we see all of these chaotic things and um, uh, these battles going on the university campuses, we can point to that definition and say, this is globally accepted, a globally accepted definition. These kids are in violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. They need to be arrested. They need to be tried. But it's not happening. It's not going to happen unless we, the people, stand up and demand that it takes place. And we have to stop these resolutions by these state-run unions, teachers unions, who are pushing this agenda. I had a teacher call me in tears in Minnesota, asking me to help her. And I said, I can only help you if you can help me find people, the public in Minnesota, that'll be willing to take this on. Right. She's devastated. In fact, she left her teaching career because she's Jewish. She didn't feel safe anymore.
Yeah, that's
and unfortunately, Minnesota has been turned over. It's little Somalia now. Wow. And you think they share the values we do? Look at Ilhan Omar. I don't think so.
Yeah, right. Somebody says, I was recently asked why is there so much hatred towards the Jews throughout the world? And it's been going on for thousands of years. And why is that?
Anti-Semitism is called the longest hatred. And it dates back to the time of Egypt. Do we ever think that anti-Semitism is going to ever be annihilated, wiped away? Yes, eventually, when God returns to this earth and he sets up his kingdom. But until then, God's watching every generation to see how we treat our Jews. And every generation is going to be judged, just like he said in Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. And he who ignores you, I will utterly destroy. We can't even ignore them. Remember what Pharaoh said. One of Pharaoh's servants said to Pharaoh about the Jews, there is a people who are here who are not like us, and they don't do what we do. That's been the same, just like I'm sure that guy that went and testified there in Maryland. Jews are supposed to be, the tribe of Judah is supposed to be set apart. All Israel, all 12 tribes are supposed to be set apart. And they're supposed to be a light to the nations. And they can't be a light to the nations because the nations are constantly fighting to try to annihilate them. We're looking for peace. Well, I don't know if we're ever going to find peace unless we start looking at our Jewish brethren and start treating them the way God sees them, as the apple of his eye. We are warned over and over. The book of Obadiah, I quoted often. God told the prophet Obadiah, in the last days, which is the time we're living in, he's going to wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob was held in captivity and they did nothing. If God in the last days is going to wipe out the Edomites, and obviously they're around us still, we don't know. I don't know who they are, but they're here, because if God's going to wipe out the descendants of Edom in the last days, what is he going to do to us if we stand by? Can the church just stand by and say, I'm not my brother's keeper? Woe be it unto us.
Right.
It is the longest hatred. And the way it changes is when we start embracing God's word. If I hear another Christian tell me that, oh, they're Zionists, oh, guess what? Your Messiah is going to land on Mount Zion. I'm a Zionist too. You think you would be. It's unbelievable, even the ignorance within the Christian church, because we don't study our Bible. The Bible is the foundation for everything else in life. If we can get that foundation right, that's why Alexis de Tocqueville thought America was so great. He came here. He spent time traveling our country. He wanted to know, why is America so great? And he finally figured it out. Because Americans, they're individuals, were led by the Bible. And they allowed the Bible and their beliefs to impact their politics. That's what made America great, because we were a nation of faith, Jews and Christians. That's what George Washington envisioned for us.
Yeah.
We've lost our way.
That
We
is
need to
absolutely
find
right.
our way home.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Okay, we're going to have one last question before wrapping up. Ben asks, since October 7th, there's been a clear direct relationship between DEI and anti-Semitism. According to the ideology, Jews are the prime oppressors in America because they're disproportionately successful, which is a big equity no-no. Yet schools continue to undergo equity audits. With the tide turning against us, how do we teach our kids to question confidentiality? To question confidently. Excuse me, my contacts are drying up. To question confidentially what the schools are teaching. How young should we get them to start questioning their teachers? Ooh, that's good.
Well, the only time our children, and you know what I love about children, is children are blatantly honest.
Oh,
And if
yes,
we teach our
absolutely.
children, Ben, if we teach our children and we lay a foundation, our kids can ask the questions that are going to counter. Unfortunately, the young man that I started the story about, he wasn't strong enough in his faith. It's important that we teach our kids what the Bible says and what God's plan is, that God has a plan for each one of our kids. If we will teach them truth, then when they hear lies and disinformation, they will counter it. And the other thing that we have to do as parents, one of the things that we did in homeschooling our kids, and whether your kids are in school, you all come home at night to eat dinner. When you sit around the table, talk about these stories, talk about them to your children, ask them what they think about that, give them all the facts, and ask them, what do you think? Because what is biblically, what is more just, for us to defend as a nation the innocent, the righteous, or is it more important for us to defend the terrorists and the evil?
Yeah.
We have to be able to get our kids to think critically, because they're not teaching our children critical thinking skills. They're teaching our children what to think, not how. And what we have to do is we have to challenge them. So, Ben, to answer your question, that's the best thing that we can do. And that can never start too young. You apply the
Yeah.
stories on a level that they can understand. I do remember when we produced our documentary on the Holocaust, my daughter, 12 years of age, we brought our kids to the theater where we were doing the big debut. And my daughter, who was 12, 13 at the time, afterwards, she was distraught. She said, "Mom, why did you make us watch that?" And I realized, but I said to her, "You have to see this. You have to know." The October 7th event, that same daughter, when she was 12, she's now 28. We were at the consul general to Israel came to town. She brought the film, the unedited film. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a 45-minute version that the Israeli IDF put together of all of the footage that was not all of it, but some of the footage of what happened on October 7th, unedited.
Mm.
So we saw it all. And I told my daughters, I said, "I'm going to go watch this film. I promised the consul general." I hadn't seen it. And they both went with me and they sat through it. One man got up and walked out, but we stayed there. There was a room full of other people as well. And before I went into them, I said, "Are you sure you're ready for this? Because you're never going to unsee what you see in here." And they said, "If we're going to defend Israel, Mom, if we're going to fight anti-Semitism, if our brethren had to live through that, then we owe it to them to bear witness. We have to be a witness. We have to teach our children how to be witnesses too."
That's right. And my oldest is 13. I also have 5 children. And I find it when I speak truthfully about what's actually happening, when I tell them, for example, about transgender ideology, it's almost
Mm.
like they just out of the mouths of babes, they say exactly the right
Yeah.
thing. When you tell them the the truth about, I mean, so I'm just going to be frank. I told them the truth about what abortion actually is and
Mhm.
things like that. And when you speak truthfully to them and you tell them honestly what these things actually are, they get it.
Yes.
It's a little bit overwhelming to have to tell your children, your young kids. I mean, my oldest is 13, to tell them
Mhm.
about the atrocities that are happening. But
Mhm.
like you said, they can't fight it and they're not going to know how to fight it if they don't know the truth behind it. So start
Right.
inculcating right away, as early as you
Mhm.
possibly can,
Mhm.
about real truth, because our society, our culture is so allergic to truth, and they
Mhm.
need to hear it because they're not going to hear it from culture. They have to hear it from us.
Right. We
So
can't protect our children and the innocence that we hoped we could have protected them from. We're not the same country.
right.
And we have to prepare our children to be warriors.
Hmm.
We can't just try to shield them from the reality of what they're going to grow up into. We have to be honest with them. We've
Hmm.
got to prepare them so that they will be able to stand. Each generation is tested, and this is the test of our generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. Where can our listeners and our viewers find you and follow you and access all of your wonderful information?
Well, we're on social media. You can find us there. We've got a YouTube page where you can find our videos at PJTN TV. Our website is pjtn.org. There's lots of resources, lots of information, more details if you want to see. We've got several white papers that we've written on textbooks and on the curriculum and what we found. So join us and become a watchman and help us to fight the battle. Because really it's a county by county, state by state effort, and we have to unite together to take on the beast. If we're gonna do anything for our children, this is the least that we can do for them.
Amen. Yes, absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Okay. She says, what is the website again? It's pjtn.org. Um, I
correct.
I will add that banner. Um, let me just add that real quick. Okay. So as I mentioned at the very top, PJTN. So I want to make sure everybody gets this. Um, as I mentioned, this was part of a three-part series. It's the second part of a three-part series of combating anti-Semitism in the schools. So I hope that everybody is able to join us next week as we have our book club, which if you haven't started reading, it's a great book. It's very quick to read. Woke Anti-Semitism by David Bernstein, and he will be here. He will join us for that conversation, as our authors always do for the Moms for Liberty Book Club. So please join us next week. And this is being recorded. I know somebody asked. It's being recorded. It will be available on the portal for all Moms for Liberty members. So please go back and share this wonderful training that Laurie did for us. We are so grateful for you and your work and your passion and your dedication to our children. You're absolutely right. We are fighting for the survival of America, and
Mhm.
we need to be united and do this all together. So, Laurie,
Mhm.
thank you abundantly, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
God bless you. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.